Welcome to Building Wealthy Habits podcast. Now, this features content and conversations with me, Randy Barkley, Jeremiah Lee, along with Laura Lee. On this podcast, we share financial advice from a team of certified financial planners, including a California licensed attorney, an MBA professional with collective experience of over 40 years.
On this week's episode, we are talking about technology and innovation as it relates to the finance industry. We spend a lot of time talking about AI, not only its impact on the financial services industry, but how we feel about it, right? And so for our listeners today, if you are a person who is curious about AI, if you're anxious about AI, if you just want to learn more, this week's episode is for you. So Jeremiah and I talk about AI and finance. Join us.
Hey, we're going to be talking a little bit about innovations today, but one thing that I see locally around Riverside, we're in Southern California, Riverside, is the Cybertruck.
Yep.
6 months ago, a year ago, we didn't see these really around. You just saw them on the news, but now we're starting to see them in person. I know there's for sure one in Riverside I see regularly, perhaps two. So I guess the jury's out. What do you think of the Cybertruck? Is it your favorite? Is it the worst?
Well, I was going to comment that, we talk about innovation, and Riverside is not typically the place to see the innovation at the very beginning. We might be like second or third wave, right? Like you're normally going to see this stuff in LA or Orange County first. So the fact that it's already trickled out to Riverside, and like you said, they stand out because there's probably only, I could probably count on one hand how many we see driving around town. Yeah. Riverside, albeit is a big county. And I'm going to kind of borrow from our kids' comments when they're in the car. Griffin loves them for the fact this is our son, our youngest son, I think for the reason that they're just kind of novel and they look like some sort of version of like a transformer by like how boxy and angular they are.
Yeah, maybe like a tank meets a spaceship.
Right?
I can see that.
Yeah, like a little bit of like an echo of that kind of like army sort of style vehicle. And he does like playing with vintage G.I. Joes. So I think that's probably where he gets that from. One of our daughters is like kind of just like curious. So not necessarily like I would say kind of neutral about it. Like, oh, those are interesting. And I think I fall more in that camp where I'm just like, what does the interior look like?
That's right.
And they certainly look like they're safe.
They do. Oh, I think I don't really have an opinion yet because I haven't been in one. I haven't sat in one and felt, hey, this is incredible. I haven't driven one. Or, I see the back of it as, what are you going to put in there? Does it open? How does that work out? So I guess judgment to be reserved until we actually have some experience.
Right. We'd love to hear from our listeners. If you want to tell us, what do you think about the new Cybertruck? And I'm going to put that on like I'm not going to call it a bucket list, just my like maybe 2024 list. I have never actually ridden in or driven a Tesla / Cybertruck. So hey,
we should make that list. I drove a Tesla. I think we know someone who has one. I drove that around a bit, or it drove me around. I'm not
right, sure. Exactly.
But I guess transitioning a little bit, we're talking about innovation today, and this podcast we're talking about artificial intelligence, so AI. And as AI is potentially going to change some things, everything, we kind of want to talk through how this works to personal finance. When we look at personal finance, what is AI doing and what do we expect it to do in the coming years?
Right. And I think the first point that I want to make in kind of preparing for this podcast is that AI still feels very novel to some extent. And that's because we're seeing it infiltrating consumer life. So, we're seeing AI across multiple industries and it's starting to take real impact on the individual's life. But when I was researching and preparing, like AI actually isn't as novel as we think it is. Like some of the earliest iterations of this technology started in this one article gave credit to 1951. So it's not quite as new as we think. However, it has evolved more rapidly in the last several years as we see its uses becoming more vast and not just broad across multiple industries, but starting to deepen within each industry. And so today we're going to focus on AI and finance. But, we meet with clients on a regular basis that have different feelings about this. They might be excited, they might be concerned, they might be worried, and not just in relation to finance, right? Into other aspects of their life as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of an elephant in the room I kind of want to start with is just express that some people are terrified of AI. They think it's in whether it's in medical, in advertising, in controlling nuclear weapons. Like they just see this as a catastrophic threat, potentially to our world. And kind of to say the jury's still out, right? We're still finding our way through here. I was thinking back of like the other technological advances that we've lived through or that in more recent years. So I think the first one being kind of cell phones. Cell phones didn't exist and then they did. And there was I remember the big brick phones, right? The big giant bricks, what that looked like as far as innovation. And now it's ubiquitous. Everyone's got a cell phone. The one that we lived through being, 80s kids, is the internet. Like there was a time where there was no internet in my home and barely had a personal computer at a certain point.
I actually just saw a meme the other day, which it was a parent saying that she makes her children sit and look at the screen for 5 minutes before they can access the internet. And it was a screenshot of the good old AOL dial-up where like it had 3 boxes. Yeah. And like the first box is like the little man like running. And then so it's kind of like making your kids sit for 2 minutes as if the cassette was rewinding, right? Before they get to watch a movie.
Right. Yeah. Be kind, rewind. Right. The things that generations don't know. So I think there's some elements of at each one of those juncture, especially the internet, there were some major fears of how this would change our world. And looking back, it has changed our world. I even think of the amount of emails that businesses and people send as compared to the amount of letters they used to write. And then you talk about social media and all those different aspects of, better or worse. It is exceedingly different. And I think the same for AI, better or worse, we will be exceedingly different, 5 years, a decade from now, because of AI. And I think to your comment earlier, I think we're seeing a lot more because it's now consumer focused. It used to be that AI was behind the scenes. I remember there was, we had AI playing chess. And the first time that beat somebody at chess was a big deal. I think it was Deep Blue. And then I don't know if it was Watson or which one of the different iterations, but they had, finally beat like a grandmaster at chess. And that was a big deal. But that was all in a computer lab with computer scientists. Whereas now with ChatGPT and OpenAI structures, we being like normal people that aren't computer scientists are now having access to this and are utilizing it in different ways.
Right.
And, currently it's getting plugged into Microsoft. It's getting plugged into a lot of things. So it's not this far off. It might be here, but it's here. Like it's into a lot of things that we're doing.
And I want to give credence to those feelings of fear or anxiety, and hopefully kind of nudge our listeners in the direction of being maybe cautious. I feel similarly about AI as I do about a Cybertruck. Like on the one hand, I'm really excited. It's interesting. It's something we haven't seen before, right? Like it catches your eye. On the other hand, I'm curious what's on the inside. And so we're actually have a podcast queued up in the next couple of weeks where we're just going to focus on cybersecurity, because I think it goes hand in hand with this conversation, because with all of those innovations, things start to speed up, right? Like information travels faster. Now that we have cell phones, we literally travel faster. We can get from point A to point B. We can look a map up on our phone. We're communicating even faster than our emails. Now we're kind of using text messages almost like in place of email. So with all of this innovation, things are speeding up. And sometimes it's just beneficial to take a minute and acknowledge the things that you don't know about the new technology and to look into that, because I think a lot of times that fear is derived from what we don't know.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's not a space where it feels comfortable enough to ask those questions.
Yeah.
So we like to create that space in our client meetings for people to ask questions that sometimes seem maybe not even directly related to, for example, their investments or their financial plan, but it's something that concerns them. And oftentimes it comes up within the context of security and how they're protecting their information within the medical industry or online. But I also, so I would love it if our listeners were just nudged in the direction from fear and anxiety into like, let's be a little bit cautious and let's be a little bit curious. And it's okay to be like a little bit excited. Like,
Yeah.
this is something we haven't really seen before.
Yeah.
Um,
Those are great comments. And I think the fear of the unknown that you mentioned is a big deal, that you don't know the answers to this. So people in their minds can make up all sorts of what this might lead to. It's great. And I think some of the exciting parts is, we were talking yesterday a little bit of, when you get an x-ray, usually there's a doctor who looks at it, and it's, one doctor looking at it. At different places, they'll do panels. We'll have multiple doctors review it. Well, my understanding is that a lot of places they're having AI now read these x-ray printouts, and there's really high success rate identifying all sorts of these great things. So there's elements where it's exciting to say, wow, this won't get missed on an x-ray, this won't get missed on a mammogram, because we're having AI help doctors, help them do better at their jobs. So there's parts of this that are super exciting. There's
Right.
parts that are scary too. So
yeah, let's talk about the efficiencies for a minute. I think maybe I mentioned this on a podcast quite a while ago, but we had a chance to attend a Financial Planning Association conference last year. I think it was June of last year in San Francisco. And I went to one of the breakout sessions that was all about AI and finance. And I mean, extremely intelligent presenters. And I'll never forget the last slide of the presentation. The female presenter was saying, there's this concern for those who are still employed that their job will become replaced, right? They will be substituted for AI. And so will robots replace our jobs? And her quote at the end of it was, AI will not replace your job, but the person who knows how to use AI will. Because AI introduces such a more efficient way to undergo regular tasks, even big tasks. The way, and I'll just speak for myself, the way that I've used it, just open chat GBT is having to do with marketing related content. So say we're developing a new brochure, or say we're trying to put together a series of emails and we have a general sense of what we want to say. AI can craft that messaging within seconds, and then we edit something that already exists. I've prompted AI when I'm drafting like our social media posts, where I say, give me 5 funny quotes about how to budget, and it'll come up with a variety of different things. So some in those kind of just sort of public facing, where we're not worried about sharing secure information or confidential information. Like, I see those efficiencies, and I get excited about those for sure.
That's great. And I think we're still at the stage where it's a lot of editing is going on. Like, you can get something from AI, you can get a content, you can get an idea, you can get some analysis, but you have to have a person editing it. And I think also at this point, we're having a person present it. We were talking a little bit of how AI is doing better with natural speech, to where it's not just that you type in a prompt, but now you can say, show me pictures of this, or, create a picture of a giraffe eating a tree, whatever it may be. And it's going to create that. But we still feel what comes out of there has to be edited and then presented by a human. And I think that's changing. I think, soon AI will be able to have those little things say, oh, hold on a second. I'm excited to show this to you, and then show a thing. But that's the future still. But I think for your comment, we're still at a point where you're using AI to make our lives better. We're not at a point where, AI is doing our jobs, or AI is taking over the world. But I think there's an element, I like your earlier comment about curiosity, of moving into this with how can this make our lives better? Not just how is it going to make it worse, but how can we really utilize this to move forward?
So let's talk specifically about how we're seeing AI in the finance industry, or financial services industry in general. And in preparation for the podcast, we kind of pulled together some things, but it's also just practical knowledge of what we're seeing from different software platforms that we utilize, and different compliance and regulatory systems and things like that. So one is, in fact, that AI can actually serve us in helping to detect fraud. Right. So it's not just utilizing, securing our information from AI, but AI can also help to serve us in trying to detect fraud. The other one that I just want to start with too is talking about how AI can now compile large data sets in a very short time period. And so again, that kind of speed and efficiency factor comes into play. But we've eliminated or greatly reduced the human error factor by using AI in the computation or analysis of just enormous data sets, and how we can use that, for example, for the purposes of investing, right? Like a lot of the analysis that compiles different reporting and indicators, et cetera, can now be done very quickly or more comprehensively. We can do it over a broader data set as well.
Yeah. There's been for years, but there's traders down Wall Street in New York that it's algorithms that are trading. So, but it's not just algorithm looking at the stock; it's actually looking at news articles. And so when the Fed chairman is speaking, when there's some news that breaks, there's AI that's already reading that, digesting it, and then making trades, kind of these micro trades, in milliseconds, based on the news that's coming out. And the exciting part of that is, wow, your finances can be moving at the speed of news, 24 hours a day. So exciting, right? You can keep up with this. The negative is that there's been a few times they've had to stop the markets. They've had to pause them because they call them circuit breakers, but because the markets were moving so quickly in a direction, and it didn't reflect the value of the companies that are being traded. It was simply trading on a story. And it was starting to get out of hand, of what it would be. So there's a news article that comes out, and the AI algorithms grab it and start trading on it. That's the scary version. The exciting version is, man, you could look at a data set and, like you said, pull out patterns, pull out tradable ideas. I mean, a famous one is go sell in May. Basically, they liquidate their portfolios in May and then come back in October. And that's a pattern that people use because people noticed it. But there's a lot of other patterns in trading that the AI can help identify and say, hey, when this happens in the world, these 5 factors, watch out. And that's great for now. I think a lot of clients would like to know if the kind of stars are aligning for a good moment or a bad moment in the markets, and to make some trade. But that's an exciting piece of AI.
And I think the major difference between the two examples that you just pulled out is who's the ultimate decision maker, right? In the one case, it's AI detecting information from a news article and then implementing action, right? And that causes chaos in some cases. And in the other scenario, it's allowing investors to be more informed because we've got more comprehensive, deeper analysis of data sets. The other one too that I just want to acknowledge is, the market has really rallied around AI. And so we've actually seen quite a bit of growth in any holdings that we have that are within this space for AI or complementary products or services. And so AI has actually been, in the last 12 months or more, a fantastic industry to invest in. So it's really growing, and it's creating a lot of that growth. So on that way, it's been a directly positive impact on some of the portfolios that we manage.
Yeah. And a standout of that is NVIDIA, which a lot of people know. NVIDIA is a microchip maker, and they have been selling and making as many chips as they can, and really doing a great job of supplying the needs for this computational process. I want to pause for a second. What you kind of mentioned, I think is really key here. I think it's trust is the big issue with AI at the moment. I don't trust the Facebook or social media algorithm that's giving me news or not news. And I think we've seen that through like the previous election. I think there's a lot of people have the expectations with this election that they're going to be fed news stories and political stories that are maybe not accurate or maybe not the whole picture. And I think there's a fear there of not trusting what you're receiving. And I think that's the same with AI. I think we as a society, maybe for a good reason, but we don't yet trust what AI is giving us. Whereas my cell phone, I often don't pick up my cell phone. Oh, is this the right number? Are they really, is it someone trying to call me? I mean, it might be a spam call, but I don't have that fear that this isn't what I think it's going to be. And so maybe that's just an element of us getting used to the technologies as AI kind of comes through.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, I think you're pulling in that human factor as we talk about AI, which is kind of the through line for this whole episode. Yeah. Just going back to the various industries related to AI in itself, the global AI trading market was valued at $18.2 billion in 2023, and it continues to grow. So it represents a huge part of our market at the
Yeah.
moment. The other one that I want to talk about too, which you were talking about AI kind of implementing trades, is that it has made trading more efficient, and that high efficiency actually drives down the cost of trading, right? So we talked about this in the history of investment when we had Jason on the podcast. We talked about what it used to cost to make trades, and now it's nominal, if not zero.
It's gone to zero, yeah. For a
Yeah.
lot of people, they're experiencing a zero trading cost. You know, the market makers have a little bit of a margin, but generally, people are not paying anything to buy Apple, to buy Tesla. You know, any of these different stocks. It's really quite phenomenal, and that part of that is the technology. I mean, you think back in the day, someone running down Wall Street on the floor, you know, making trades, and we're just so far from that electronically where we're at.
Right. And as a result, we're going to see an increase in arbitrage trading, and signals and strategy builders, because, again, information and trading is going to happen more efficiently and more quickly. And so people are going to start to hedge against some of those trends that they see ahead of time. And it's also going to create kind of new opportunities, again, for arbitrage, which is taking advantage of a differential between the value of a stock and what it's actually priced at in the market, right?
Yeah.
And so people can, but it has to do with a lot of active trading. So.
Yeah, that's right. Well, one thing I want to touch on before we wrap up too much is kind of the view that I've heard a few people say of, do I need AI in my personal finance? You know, do I still need an advisor? Can't a robo advisor, can't AI tell me what to do? And I think there's a few conversations we've had around this of, you know, one of it being, you could build your own house, right? You could have a hammer and nails. There's no one stopping you. But then there's, a skill set, there's abilities, there's, think of being like a carpenter or a plumber. And then someone else might say, well, I don't want to build it myself, but I'll just run all the contractors. I'll be the general contractor, build my house. Well, again, that's a lot of work, right? And so I think when people are looking at having a financial advisor, there's the work that's involved. There's also the expertise that's involved. And when I think of AI, looking at your life and saying, hey, you need to invest in this or you need to invest in that. If you're very vanilla and all you want is vanilla, it might get it right? It might plan it for you, easy enough. But we live in a society, and especially in the baby boomer generation, where they want to have, Mint and Chip and Rocky Road, all the other flavors. And your life is unique. And I think there's a lot of people that realize that, especially when, say, a parent passes away and now they're walking into other assets that were their parents and realize, wow, this is complex. This is not standardized. This does not fit well with a, computer looking at my life and telling me what to do. Right. You need a person you can trust and kind of walk through with. And I think that's the benefit of our industry, is not that we are scared of AI, but we want to embrace it where it's useful, but also understand that people are unique. People have unique needs, and to be able to address those holistically. I don't see AI being able to do that in a real sense anytime soon.
Well, and I think, again, just to kind of round out this conversation, when we look back at the industry of financial planning, it was certainly derived from financial analysts, CFAs, people who were traders by day, that then wanted to kind of move into this more applied investment strategy for individuals. But what we've seen in just our profession is the emphasis now on the relational side of the work that we do. Because just to your point, individuals are dynamic. To our listeners, your life is dynamic, and it's going to have twists and turns, and everybody has a plan, to quote Mike Tyson again, until they get punched in the face. And this was something I posted this week on Instagram, because I love that quote, right? Like, we sit down and we have to ask some hard questions or some what if questions, and what we're doing is trying to prepare for those curves and those twists and turns that you don't expect. And so I think there will be services like AI that can benefit us, but to what extent do we rely upon them? Yeah. And I think hopefully not to the disservice of the human capital and the human connection, and because individuals have been and will continue to be very dynamic.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. Well, this is a great conversation. I think AI is exciting. I think AI is a bright future for us, for the world. And I liked your earlier comment that we can approach it with curiosity and bravery, really. Courage and curiosity, maybe put those two together, rather than just fear of seeing where can this be helpful for our world. I think will be great.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for listening, folks. Have a good one. We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review. Even if it's not 5 stars, we welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about, or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit tricordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordadvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
This show was produced by Graham Gardner at Model FA. Find out more about how to create a podcast for your financial planning business by visiting modelfa.com. We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.